To understand the reason for the importance of the week of the storm, you must understand my experience was a lot more fortunate compared to those who went through Katrina. What was shown on the TV screens was merely a brief example of the experience for myself and the people of the Gulf Coast. That weekend was one of the few that I regret. One, because I didn't take advantage of seizing the last moment I had in New Orleans.
The same thing was happening that happens with a lot of hurricanes coming to New Orleans. There's a group that says, I'm going to leave. And then there's the other group that says, I rode out Betsy and I'm going to stay here and it's going to be okay.
The thing that's most glaring in all of this is that the conditions continue to deteriorate for the people who are victims in this, and the efforts to do something about it don't seem to be anywhere in sight.
Based on the latest information and forecast track received from the National Weather Service, Jefferson Parish will suffer severe impact from Hurricane Katrina.
The cool, confident, intuitive leadership Bush exhibited in his first term, particularly in the months following 9/11, has vanished. A better leader would have flown straight to the disaster zone and announced the immediate mobilization of every available resource.
If persons haven't evacuated by now, they need to leave immediately.
My grandmother was like many others. Nothing was more important to her than her family. My uncle and my mother were good people, but trying to find themselves. Myself, I was like the water. I flowed where the current just took me. Like many other people who stayed in New Orleans, and my grandmother was very, very, very stern on her decision to stay home. Even though she was disabled and in her bed, she had a mind of her own. And my uncle wouldn't want to leave her, and my mom, the same. Even though we had a choice to go to Mississippi and be with family members, my grandmother, like many other people in New Orleans, ignored it and said that this is my home, and I'm going to stay here. Katrina came running down, and it was almost like Katrina just knew that New Orleans did not fear her, and the beat just kept going. Katrina just had to show that it was stronger. You just seen the force and the power of Katrina. You could see the wind, you could see the water, you could see everything just moving. That's how hard it was blowing. Katrina just came with her own little beat, and it just was powerful, and it sounded like the trumpets of Gabriel, or if the four horsemen of war was coming. And it was just that energy, that force, that just reminded us that we're just merely human. And maybe we should have took heed to what the people were telling us about the storm. My mom, she was trying to make sure that my uncle and I woke up and we could see the storm. And the only thing she could say was, this is history in the making. You guys gotta wake up. You guys gotta see it. And so when I seen all of that, the power of the storm just moving everything, I just knew that this was serious. This is what I felt was serious. But I still didn't take it as nearly as serious because I thought, hey, I could still stay home because there was no flooding at the time. No later than a few hours later, my uncle said, Jake, you gotta see this. Look outside, and of course there's a little bit of water. Walked around a corner, and the water was deep. We were fortunate. Me and my uncle walked around, and we seen how deep the water was. I had a dog at the time, and we let him run up and down the street, and people just treating it like it was a regular day. We went back home, and it was about 3:30, 4 o'clock. And my mother was listening to the news, and that's what she told us, that, hey, this was really a bad storm. Apparently the levees is knocked down. And she explained about the pumps, because of the fact there was just too much water. There was the pumps, and so the pumps are not functioning correctly. It's flooding the pumps. So none of the pumps are taking the water and pushing it back out. I guess apparently the rest of the city got that news at the same time as her, because you couldn't hear the chaos around the corner where we were at. We was, like I said, fortunate. Soon as my uncle said, okay, well, let's go see how everybody else is handling it, went around the corner towards the fairgrounds. That's when we seen lots and lots of people breaking into places.
I don't know, man. I don't let them walk out of here. Let them walk the hell out of here. Let them get on that interstate and walk out, walk someplace, walk to the Walmart on the other side of the river, walk to some other town, walk someplace where you can help them. All you got here is thousands and thousands of people who have desperate needs 6 days later. These people in the same clothes. Where do you think they're going to the bathroom? What the hell?
Survival of the fittest started happening. There was a corner store that had clothes and jewelry and shoes and also food and stuff. And people was breaking into it. It was chaos. People were fighting over shoes. But people were fighting over these things. We tried to make sure to make haste and get back home because it started getting dark and we didn't have no power. Sitting out looking at the stars, I just wonder why, man. God, what are you doing? Or what are you trying to show us? What are you trying to prove to us? So I remember something from church about Jesus writing in the sand. Nobody knows technically what he was writing, but I used it as a thing. Well, I had water. There was no sand around. And I had a stick. So started writing prayers and like asking questions for God to show me the way. Like, what is your purpose behind this? It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up to my mother and my uncle listening to the radio. And the news was saying that there's evacuation points and explaining about those type of things. Well, my uncle and my mom started making plans because of the fact that it didn't look like the water was going anywhere. The water actually rose. We walked around trying to find neighbors who possibly had electricity or phone or whatever like that to get contact, and there was nobody. I mean, nobody had anything except for 1 or 2 neighbors who had a generator inside their house. And that one neighbor who had a generator, his generator, he was able to only watch the news channels updates. Me and my uncle decided to make it a new day and get a new start that morning, but we heard this lady, she was screaming for help. Her dad was dying. She was screaming, saying, help me, help me. It's kind of weird because of the fact that it was kind of the same way my dad passed away. He was dying, and my uncle was like, I can't help her. And the only thing we could just do is sit there helplessly listening to this lady screaming for help for her dad. And the Coast Guard or the National Guard, whoever was supposed to be helping these people, just rolled by on their boat like it was nothing. I had such a hate for the government that day. I had such a hate for how people and humanity can be, that they could just sit there and just let somebody just die. This man died.
The police kept passing us by, and the National Guard kept passing us by with their guns pointed at us. And because they wouldn't, when you see a truck full of water and people have been crying for water for a day and a night, and the water truck passes you by, just keeps going, how are we supposed to believe these people were here to help us?
My uncle was definitely got motivated, especially after that, to leave. I was too. When we was walking up the street and we seen the body, one of Glenn's friends, my uncle, he just had a rope that he was using to bring his some couple of things that he grabbed from the store, And he used that rope to tie it around the man's body and tie it to the street lamp. But you could look at this guy, he was pulling his body like it was the last sense of humanity that was there. Later on, we found out that he got stuck in a manhole, and that's how he drowned. We walked around some more. We walked further up. It was about a mile out. Walked to a neighborhood, and people was talking about they let go of some of the prisoners. That was some of the news that's passing around. The people in Superdome are not safe. They're leaving the Superdome. People are going crazy at the Superdome. People are getting raped. People are getting beaten. The one thing that just broke my heart even more, one of the prisoners got out and they had these 2 kids and nobody really could get to them. It's kind of hard to explain how they couldn't get to them, but these 2 prisoners took these 2 kids and the neighborhood never heard from them again the last time that I checked when I was back home. The kids were about my kids' age, about 3 and 4. That's hurtful. That's sad. The city was in chaos. We were not the same people no more.
I guess somebody was putting out some bad news that it was totally unsafe. It's not unsafe to come in here and help these people. No water, no ice, no sea rashes, nothing for the last 4 days. Dead people around the walls of the convention center, laying in the middle of the street. Babies, 2 babies dehydrated and died. I just tell you, I couldn't take it.
They won't let them walk out of there because I'm standing right above that convention center. And what they've done is they've locked them in there. The government said, you go here and you'll get help. Or you go in that Superdome and you'll get help. And they didn't get help. They got locked in there and they watched people being killed around them. And they watched people starving. And they watched elderly people not get any medicine. And now they know it's happening because we've been telling them repeatedly over and over every day.
That night, me and my uncle sat down, we talked, and we had something so intimate conversation that I never had with anybody else. We was talking about like as if we knew for sure we was gonna get out. We had that faith still. We had that hope still. And those letters that I wrote to God, it showed me that day what was his plan. He wanted to humble us. He wanted to make us stronger. He wanted to make us realize that who was in control. One of the saddest things that I found that you couldn't bring no pets on the evacuation bus. So, couldn't bring my dog. I got that dog right after my dad passed away. When we walked, it was a small boat that had a motor attached to it, and it was tied to a tree. I said, grab that boat. And that was how we was going to get out. We got the boat, we grabbed some luggage, and we grabbed my grandmother. We put her in a chair because of the fact that she was disabled. She couldn't move her legs. And so we put her in a chair. Me and my uncle, we started off pulling the boat as far as we could. Well, I tried to get in the boat. When I got in the boat, my grandmother fell over into the water. This was a deep area because we was 10 feet off the ground. And she fell in. I grabbed her as fast as I possibly could. My uncle dived in to try to grab her, and by the grace of God, none of our luggage fell in, but my mother fell in as well. For the rescue people came and got us all in the boat, and it was okay, then we sat there and waited a few hours for the bus to come, picked us up, and it was a group of people. But it must have been a message. It must have been a miracle, because when you rode on the bus and you seen all the people that we had to pass to get there. It was horrific. You seen a nursing home. You could tell it was a nursing home because there was a bunch of elderly people and people in their scrubs and trying to make sure that they were okay, and they didn't want to leave those people. So I commend those people because they didn't want to leave. But all these people were on the bridge, and they came to us. He dropped us off as close as possible to Baton Rouge as he possibly could. And we got into contact with my aunt who stayed in Grand Rapids. Of course, we didn't have no money. We didn't have nothing. except for the clothes on our back and, a few pieces of luggage. The moment that I realized that I was fortunate compared to a lot of people, especially with the bus scene and seeing the people that passed away, was when I recall even looking at the evacuation area. I seen all the bodies tied up to that bridge. We was shocked. We was astonished. And then when we went to go tell our story to somebody else that we seen, the guy was about 6'2", 6'3", bombed out because of the fact that he was so dirty and he was really broken. He looked like he's seen everything in the world wrong. Well, he came from Biloxi, Mississippi. Him and his friends decided to stay at a hotel and party it out. And when they partied, the hurricane came. Well, it was worse over Mississippi because I believe the eye dropped over Biloxi for sure. And he said that he was the only person survived the hurricane. All of his friends died. A lot of them died from the glass damage. A lot of them died from other things. But he was the only person that survived. Me and my uncle, and we got on the plane realizing that day that we didn't seize everything. Our family, our friends, our good times, our childhood. We didn't take our lives in New Orleans seriously. Hurricane Katrina didn't change me for the worse. It changed me for the better. I got a wife and kids now. A lot more things than what I did back in New Orleans. But that's because of the fact that I seize my moments now. So I thank Katrina for changing my life.